I have just spent the past 3 hours rotting on the couch watching Paradise Season 2 because it just dropped. I'm super excited. This was my most anticipated TV show of the month, so this is going to be my full recap and review of the first 3 episodes. This will obviously contain spoilers for the first 3 episodes and the first season, so if you have not seen either of those yet, I don't recommend that you move forward with this, but I do recommend that you go watch those immediately because they are amazing. But before we get into any of that, if you like daily film and TV content, be sure to hit that follow button. So I had initially thought that season 2 was going to pick up exactly where season 1 left off, with Xavier leaving the bunker in pursuit of his wife Terry in Atlanta, but I was completely wrong. Season 2 episode 1, called Graceland, follows a new character played by Shailene Woodley named Annie. Now, we don't really know a whole lot about Annie at the start. She's going on a tour of Graceland. She's a big fan of Elvis, or so it seems, but it was really for her dying mother. Fast forward a little bit, she is now a med student, but she has some PTSD of her mother's death that causes her to have an accident at work, so she completely drops out and drives to the gates of Graceland and has a full-on mental breakdown. With this, she ends up meeting Gail, tells her a little bit of the story, and Gail offers her a job as a tour guide at Graceland, which kind of works out for her. That is until the news that the world is ending goes live and everybody kind of spirals out of control and has to find safety, or they're going to end up dying. So Annie and Gail end up preparing a way to stay alive inside of Graceland, but while they are preparing, Gail takes a fall and ends up breaking her leg, and she ends up succumbing to her injuries. That had happened on day 46. Fast forward a lot into the future to day 689, when Annie finally sees the sun. She feels the sun, but she has been living alone this entire time, so she's obviously going to be skeptical to new visitors that obviously just, randomly show up on her doorstep. Now, ultimately, if you've been living on your own this entire time, you think that these people are not going to be friendly. They didn't show up in the friendliest manner. But we meet this guy named Link, we meet this guy named Geiger, and the rest of their crew, and they seem to be pretty nice. Annie and Link form a connection together. Link informs her of what they are going to do, which is to go to the bunker in Colorado because they think that there are materials there to help restore the world. Link would like for Annie to come with them, and it seems like she's going to go, but the next day she hides herself in a room, locks herself in there, and Link's trying to get her out. But then Geiger comes down and is like, hey, we got a mission to do. We have to go to the bunker. We have to go kill Alex. We didn't know that before. So after all that, Annie decides she's not going to go with the guys, and she watches them ride off into the sunset. And then next we get a few clips of Annie living alone in the house, but this time around she's pregnant with Link's child. And then she sees a plane crash nearby, and she thinks that it's Link because he left her a note saying, I will come back for you. So she goes to venture the plane crash, and she finds Xavier. And that is where episode 1 ends, and you're immediately going to want to go into episode 2. Overall, episode 1 was an absolute banger start to season 2, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. So episode 2 starts, and you think you're going to pick up exactly where you left off with Annie and Xavier meeting. You are completely wrong. This is going to be strictly Xavier's story. This episode starts out with Xavier flying away in the plane, but he encounters a hailstorm, and that is ultimately what leads to him crashing. This episode is a little bit different because it is told in the present, as well as it is told in a lot of flashbacks when Xavier met Terry, his wife. I really liked the flashbacks that we got in episode 2. I thought it was really cool seeing how Xavier and Terry met and how they formed their bond together, and we get to see Xavier's relentless dedication to his family in this, and even in the early stages. Xavier ended up wounding his knee while doing some training sessions, and that is what wound him up into the hospital right next to Terry. She is in the hospital for some scoliosis problems. But then we flash back to present day right after Xavier's plane had crashed and he hurt his knee again. But right after that, there is a kid rummaging through his things, and this kid is not speaking whatsoever. Xavier doesn't really know what's going on, and then a couple of men approach and the kid helps Xavier to safety. So the kid and Xavier get to safety, and they're on this wrecked boat, and there's more kids on the boat. None of them look like they're over the age of like 10, but they seem like they've been around in this world for a little bit, and they kind of know how things play out. So Xavier needs to slide his knee back into place, and the kid times it with the thunder so no one hears him scream. That was pretty sick. Xavier wakes up from passing out, and he hears some things outside, so he goes to check it out and finds a guy out there looking for the kids, and they end up fighting, and Xavier kills him. I think that this is his moment where he realizes the world is really not the same as what it once was, and that he's gonna have to get his hands dirty if he wants to go save his wife. We also get a few more flashbacks of Xavier and Terry's arc, and she ended up having her surgery. She went blind for a few days, but Xavier stayed in the hospital with her to make sure that she was okay, and we know what happens from there. Now we flash forward back to present day, and Xavier had passed out from his injuries. He had gotten stabbed in that fight fight, and once he wakes up, he realizes that the kids are no longer there and his stuff is no longer there. Just a note that says sorry and the picture of his kids. He ends up making it back to the airplane but passes out again, and that's where it picks up from where episode 1 left off with Annie finding him. He tells her that he's from a bunker in Colorado. Annie wants to get to that bunker in Colorado. Xavier wants to go to Atlanta. She says, "You're not going to Atlanta. You're taking me to find my baby daddy." And that's where episode 2 ends. It was a bit slower than the first episode, but it was still an overall great episode. I am glad to have Xavier back. He is my absolute man. I think he is going to be a badass in this season. And then in episode 3, you think that you're going to get these two and their arc on where they're going to go in the next episode, but it's not going to happen because now we're going to the bunker, but we're starting out with a flashback from Sinatra. We kind of get this flashback from season 1 where she is attending the seminar and she wants to find out more on how she can save the world. And now that she has a little bit more information on what's going to happen and what she needs to do, we're going to fast forward to the day that Cal Bradford was elected as president, but she's kind of moping around. And this is because the project that she is working so hard on is not coming to fruition fast enough. And then Cal Bradford's dad ends up recommending that she does not be the nice person anymore and that it is time for her to take a different route. And then we fast forward to present day when Sinatra wakes up from her coma from when she got shot. And in the month that she has been out, there has been a lot of things that have been going on. Cal Bradford's son is running around putting X's everywhere, starting a rebellion in honor of Xavier and all the lies that are being told in the bunker. We also have the new president, Henry Baines, who no one really seems to respect, but he wants to earn the respect or force it. And all of the kids seem to have their own secret communication system by leaving notes in books. And then next we get a flashback of Xavier and Nicole talking, but then Jane walks in, and Jane is really the one that shot Sinatra, but Xavier says, "Hey, let's tell everybody that I did everything so that we can remain calm." And this is because he doesn't want anything crazy to happen while he is gone, because he wants to go get his wife and bring her back to safety and then figure out all the things that are happening. Which, in theory, sounds like a good idea, but as we progress through the episode, we find out that Jane is not really working for the Secret Service anymore and protecting the president. She still has this hidden agenda of working for Sinatra, who is now awake, and they know that they are working in tandem together. Jane meets Sinatra in the hospital and says that, "Hey, here's what happened, but here's what really happened, and I did it so I could protect you." Nicole can't really do much because she was demoted and she's kind of Jane's assistant now. And then there's this big meeting of all of these bunker executives coming together, and we realize that Sinatra was siphoning power away from the bunker for her own secret project. And then we get another flashback of Sinatra meeting with a guy that was recommended to her from Cal Bradford's dad to go take care of the problem of why her project isn't coming to fruition fast enough. And that problem handler is going to be Billy Pace from season 1. So I'm really glad that we got to see Billy's character come back and see what happened to him before the events leading up to the bunker, and he kind of seems like a badass. He ends up taking the developer who houses the technology that Sinatra needs to a bar, gets him drunk a little bit, and tells him, "Hey, sign this paper or bad things are going to happen." He ultimately does not sign the paper, just gives him an address to his home where he goes and finds some weird things going on. And then we go back to the bunker where Nicole is sniffing around Jane's house because she feels like something fishy is going on. She finds the records of Billy's death and sees that she completely lied in there, saying that he had nothing to live for, but he was going to propose to Jane. So now Nicole really knows that Jane is absolutely full of it. And then jumping back to Billy Pace for a little bit, we see him go to the developer's house, and the developer is going on about how fate drew him there and that he is there for a reason, and he's going on about why his wife is dying, and then he pretty much accepts his own death and knows that he is going to die, but he says, "Hey, don't hurt the kid." He then ends up handing Billy a tissue and says, "You're gonna need this." And then he shoots the developer and then goes to leave, and then while he's leaving, a boy walks in, and guess what? It is Link from episode 1, the same guy who's with Annie that Annie and Xavier are going to find. And that's how all of our characters sort of tie together right there in that moment, and then the next second Billy's nose starts bleeding. So the developer absolutely knew something was going on probably in the atmosphere and that his nose was going to start bleeding by being in that specific area. Going back to the bunker, President Baines wants to go for a run to burn off some steam, but Jane suggests that he does not go by himself even though he wants some privacy, but since she kind of sucked up to him earlier, he lets her come with. But now it's just the two of them. We already know Jane has a secret agenda. We know that President Baines is gonna get got, and that is what ends up happening. But Nicole is on to her, so she tells the other agents, "Hey, I need her location now." And as she goes to roll up on Jane, Jane knocks her out after she kills President Baines. And then she frames Nicole for this. Some other important details from this episode that are probably going to be even more important in future episodes are, one, Jeremy being arrested and going to this super underground prison and meeting up with one of the bunker executives who helped build the place, and he says, hey, you're gonna help me blow the doors off of this place. Another one is that Gabriella, one of the psychiatrists, ended up placing a bug in Sinatra's home, so now we're hearing everything that's going on in this room. Overall, episode 3 was still really good, but I am excited to see how these all tie together in episode 4, because I imagine that we're going to shift back to Annie and Xavier, maybe even get a little bit of the bunker. I'm super excited that Paradise is back. This was one of my favorite shows from last year, and I know it's going to be one of my favorites from this year. I'm super happy that they dropped 3 episodes at once, and I cannot wait to see what happens next week. I'm curious to know, what are your theories moving forward into episode 4, and what were your thoughts on these 3 episodes?